everybody. Welcome back to the Lollygaggers Dynasty recap. This is episode 2. I am your host, Ari, a.k.a. Zang. And for the first time, I am joined by my co-host, Robert, a.k.a. Ace Garcia. Ace, how you doing, man?
Hey, doing good, sir. How about yourself?
Good. I'm doing very well. Thanks for joining me. I'm excited to have you along. So after our first full week, we're going to start off by diving into the matchup minute. Our first matchup does feature my co-host. It was Ace versus Big Peach. Coming in, we had a projection of Big Peach beating Ace as projected at about 63% chance of that happening. And that did end up following through. BP took down Ace. It was 470 to 447. And both of those teams are now 1-1, so sitting comfortable at 500. Our next matchup was Al Martinet versus Mike. Pardon me.
Did you make my matchup the first one on purpose because I lost? That's
we just got it. It's a little bit of podcast hazing.
Yeah.
Sure
my introduction.
Exactly. Yeah, bring you in. So our next matchup was Al Martinet versus Mike. This was projected as a pretty big blowout for Al Martinet, 77% in his favor, but it actually ended up going the other way. Mike defeated Al Martinet 492 to 385. So that was a bit of a surprise there. Quite an upset.
I think that's probably I'd say that's an up or oh my god, I just totally blanked. But I think that script got completely flipped.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, but what a score too! Over 100 points. That's pretty surprising.
Almost 500 there for Mike too. Talk about a big week.
Big score. Mike is now 1-1, and Al Martinet fell down to 0-2. A lot of this had to do with some pretty shaky pitching performances from Al Martinet. I know on one day he had minus 17 from his pitchers, and there were a number of others, who didn't quite show up. So that might be a little bit of a clue as to how that ended up happening.
Yeah, it looks like Cal Raleigh had a big day today for Mike as well, putting up a nice 13
for Big Dumper.
After that big contract he signed too.
I know. It's good for him.
Yeah.
Our next one, we've got Bose versus Hideki. We came in with about a 59% chance of Hideki taking down Bose. That did end up being the case, although by quite a bit larger of a margin that was expected. Hideki scored 518 with Bose at only 341. So a little bit of a low-scoring round for our redraft dynasty champion.
Yeah, damn, 518, man. He's got some high scores.
It's a hell of a score.
Wow.
Big one. But both of those teams are now 1-1. And speaking of high scores, they're coming up to me and Okie now. Okie was projected to take me down. It was 66% chance. And this one did. It came down to Sunday Night Baseball.
This matchup was insane.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, earlier in the week, like I was saying, I thought I had no chance. I was down by, I think, close to 100 points. And it did end up with me coming out on top. 544 to 520, and really bolstered by that 18 inning outburst by the Red Sox on Sunday Night Baseball. That definitely helped me close the door.
Yeah, talking about relying on your home team on Sunday Night Baseball, and they come through, man.
It was a big gamble because either they came through and I felt great, Sox won and I won, or the other way. And, luckily for me, it did work out in the way I hoped. I'm now 0-2, and Okie's sitting at 1-1. You're
2-0.
I'm 2-0. Thank you. Pardon me.
Mm-hmm.
2-0. Yeah. So I'm undefeated currently.
Collusion.
Collusion. Exactly. I mean, I'm just trying to sandbag my stock. So make sure everyone's comfortable. Flaming Prius versus JMC is our next one. We had about a 61% chance of JMC taking down Flaming Prius. That did end up being the case. It was 500 to 427. So pretty solid win there for JMC. He's now 2-0, and Prius is 0-2. So we had one of those big swings where we really kind of separated people out.
Yeah, that was a good matchup as well, actually.
It was a good one. Pretty close again until the end there.
Yeah, a lot of these matchups were really close, actually, going into the last day of the games.
I got to say, 12 is feeling like a great number. I feel like everyone's scoring a lot of points, but, it's not... you're not out for the season if you lose one of your pitchers. So I'm happy that's the number we landed with in Dynasty.
Shakes fist angrily at the sky for Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
and I'm not even a Yankees fan, so you can just imagine.
You feel the pain. You feel the pain at least a little bit, which, And,
Get off this year to a great start.
And next, for our last matchup, we got Serial Chiller versus Inten. The projection was for Serial Chiller to take down in 10. Unfortunately, I didn't actually record the percentage, so I just had that it was supposed to be 505 to 497. So it was supposed to be pretty tight matchup. And Serial did end up defeating in 10. It was 421 to 387. So not quite as tight as they expected, and definitely a little more low scoring. This is another one of those matchups where we had Serial moving to 2-0 and in 10 down to 0-2. So again, pretty big swing in the standings for both of those.
Yeah, that is a huge. What is that now? 3 people at 0-2.
I think it is. Yeah,
Al, Prius, and Inten. Yeah,
and
so
Inten. Yeah, so
0-2.
A little bit of work, and we'll get to look at their performances next week. But Ace, what's a matchup that really stood out to you here? Which one of these sort of catches your eye?
I mean, it had to be you and Okie's. I mean, that was just. I'm pretty sure like everybody. We were all talking about it in the Discord too. Like that was an insane matchup going into. I think it was 0.2 going into Sunday Night Baseball, but it was like 0.3 coming into today in total. So the fact that it was even that close after all the games just shows how insane it was. But yeah,
it was. And 2 of the highest scores. I think. Serial. No, I'm so sorry. They were the 2 highest scores of the week. So again, just like, kind of brutal. It's a game of matchups, Okie scores the second most points, but this week he was matched up against the highest scoring, and that always comes around. So I'm sure I'll drop like a 600.
We're going to look back on this and, it's going to be the difference between a 4-0 start and like a 1-3 start.
Especially with the playoffs this year, they're pretty tight. So not too many teams making it.
I was gonna say, how many teams make it? Is it 6?
I believe it's 6. Yeah, okay, so it's 6 and then 6 in kind of a consolation bracket, which it is half the league. But a lot of these are coming down pretty close. The toilet bowl, exactly. The Sacco, nice. For me, the one that really stood out is that Al Martinet versus Mike matchup. I mean, just how heavily it was projected in Al Martinet's favor, and then Mike really came back. 492 again. Pretty high scoring matchup, and it does knock Almart down to 0-2. This was one of those where they were both coming in 0-1, so definitely looking for the win. So that one stood out big time to me.
Yeah, that was a great matchup too. And then I was also a little honorary shout out to my matchup with Big Peach. I was a severe underdog coming into this one, and to only lose by like 23 points.
Only 23, yeah.
And my bullpen had a rough go at it, but we ride.
We ride. On to next week. Moving on to our best bats segments. We're going to notice a little bit of a theme here, especially as we get to batters 4 and 5. But starting up here, we have Kyle Tucker of the Cubs. He scored 59.8 points. A couple of his high numbers were 20.7 and 13.9. Those were against the Athletics on Monday and Tuesday. And then he did cap it off nicely this week with 13.4 against San Diego on Sunday. Just below him was Pete Alonso. He got 52.3 points. He was a little bit boomer bust this week. He had a 17.1. He had a 19.9, but a couple in the minuses. And it's definitely interesting to see how Pete fares throughout the season. He's swinging a pretty hot bat right now, and especially with that Mets lineup definitely giving him some protection. And then the last one before we pause real quick is now my guy Alex Bregman, who really had a strong week. He had a 15.7 against Baltimore, and then that huge performance, which if we're being honest, won me the matchup with 22.8 on Sunday Night Baseball against St. Louis. That really ended up being the difference in that pretty tight matchup. Do you have any thoughts right off the bat about those 3 pretty big performances?
Yeah, shout out Kyle Tucker for sweeping the Padres. That was pretty cool. Love
for you guys.
Love to see that as a Chargers fan as we dropped 2 to Philly. So that was, on just a personal note, that was great to see. And yeah, Pete Alonso, I know you're talking about like very hit or miss, but I think that's why I love the week format for fantasy, is because you can kind of see. He may have a bad day here and there, but overall, how is he performing? And I think Pete's one of those guys that, he's going to have those, 0 for 4, 2, 3 strikeout games, from here to here. But I just think his overall value the rest of the weeks, because he has the potential to, hit 3 home runs in a game.
Right.
And just absolutely blow your stats out of the water. But I really want to talk about this number 4 because we have something to celebrate.
Yeah, first cycle of the year, Carson Kelly. Who would have put that on a bet? I would have lost a lot of money.
You could have won a lot of money too. Because I want to know what the odds on that were.
Gotta be crazy. But yeah, Carson Kelly, first cycle of the season. That was a 28.6 performance against the Athletics. starting pitcher numbers. Again, I used that phrase last week, but starting pitcher numbers from a batter, especially from a catcher, that's something else. And then 13.3 to cap off the week again against San Diego. So really solid performance from him. And then our last one, this is probably my favorite from the week. This is Nico Horner. So, I go in and I sort of sort things and figure out like who, had a really strong performance, who kind of had the most points. And Nico Horner is right up there with these guys. Let me pull up his stats real quick on what he got. But the second thing I kind of do is look at, okay, what were their big performances? What really got them there? And Nico didn't have his biggest one was 10.4. That was today. But he had an 8.7, 4.1, 7.9, 2.4, and 7.7. So really, really, really solid performance kind of across the board there for him. And as we're saying this, I'm realizing I didn't call out what teams these guys play for. So Kyle Tucker's on my team. That was pretty helpful. Again, in my upset, Pete Alonso plays for Mike. Again, we're noticing some of those sort of clues on the upsets. Bregman is another one of my guys. Serial Chillers has Carson Kelly, so he got to benefit kind of from that big cycle. And then in 10 has Nico Horner. So I just love seeing that performance. The lowest one is a 2.4, but really, really solid stuff from Nico. And that's so valuable in fantasy, just having that guy who can, rack up a couple points for you every day. So that was cool to see Nico on there.
Yeah, especially guy who plays in like the heart of the lineup. So he's always going to get at bats, and especially, the Cubs look really good right now. They're off to a really hot start. That's what I love about baseball. It's such a long year. So there's, people are going to go in slumps. People are going to get hot. And I think right now it's just exciting to see, obviously the guys who are off to scorching starts, and, Nico being one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the Cubs, they did start their week off against the Athletics. And I'm noticing a theme that a lot of these big performances were against the Athletics. And look, we kind of get our jokes off about the Athletics, but I'm really wondering how big a factor is that Sacramento ballpark going to be in fantasy this year?
I think it's going to be, this is something it's going to potentially make, I almost said Oakland. It's going to make athletic players a little bit more useful, I'd argue, because you're playing half your games in a little league stadium. No offense, and it's almost like playing in Yankee Stadium. Had to get a jab in there, but it is what it is. I have Goldschmidt and Bellinger on my team, so I can say that after the first weekend of games,
you get to benefit. Yeah,
I got exactly. So this is the beautiful thing about about fantasy baseball, and each kind of sport has its own niche with it. But with baseball, it's not just about, who's the best on a certain team, but who's playing in those easier stadiums, who's got the best matchups. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's, I like it. I think it's going to play a pretty big factor, I'd assume. Not, I wouldn't say it's going to be, like
game
impactful.
breaking.
Yeah. That's a better word. Yeah. Game breaking. It's not going to, break it, but I think it's going to definitely be something that we have to consider going into each game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. I know you're definitely going to lean towards starting guys who are playing in that stadium, especially against the A's. And man, I am never going to stream a pitcher in that ballpark, no matter how good they are.
God, no.
Honestly, it's to the point where you might, depending on the pitcher, especially if they're kind of a middling guy, not like a true ace or anything, you might got to think about sitting them. These numbers are insane, what we saw coming out of the week. Suzuki had kind of a cooler series, Seiya Suzuki, against the Padres to end the week. But before that, he was up on this list with them too. So we were looking at like 4 Cubs making up this list just from playing against, the A's in that ballpark. So that'll definitely be something to keep an eye on. Moving on to our potent pitchers now. We're going to start off. This is a little bit of a delicate balance that I'm finding with this one, where there are some pitchers that pitch twice in a week. And sometimes they are, that those numbers just put them over a guy who might have had a really good performance or something like that.
Inflated.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a balancing act. And speaking of that, we did have a guy, his name is not one I was familiar with, if I have to be completely honest. It was, and now I just lost the name. I don't see it, but he scored around 40 points this week as a pitcher, and it was on 2 mediocre performances, 20 points. So that's not the kind of guy we're going to include. What we are going to include is these guys, even though they had 2 games, put up massive points. First of all, for Hideki, we have Chris Bubic. 2 games for a total of 67.4 points. This was pretty fun to research. I realized 33.7 in both of those games. First one was against Milwaukee. The second was against Baltimore. And then very consistent. 6 innings pitched in game 1, 6.2 in game 2, and he had 8 Ks in both. So, yeah, really kind of cool to see that coming out for Hideki, and definitely helped him in that matchup against Bose, even with the breathing room that he had.
My
next
king,
guy's winning.
my glorious king.
Your next guy is one of yours, Nate Eovaldi, with the complete game shutout again on 8 Ks, 52.5 points. That is. I mean,
dude,
crazy
when that happened, I was like, oh, I won. I was like, this is going to be a great week. And
I mean, yeah, again, even without that, we talked it being pretty close with you, 23 points coming in. Again, a good start kind of match that. Like, even if Eovaldi has a good start with 30-something points, like that's, a total blowout. So really big performance from him there. Brady Singer, another Royals pitcher, also through 2 games. He totaled 55.4 points. He had just 15 points in the second game, but he started the first game with 40.4 points, which is an awesome show out. 7 shutout innings, only allowed 1 hit, and it was 8 Ks against Texas. It was a pretty potent lineup, so that was definitely one we wanted to highlight. He's on Okie Sooners team, so again, closed, that matchup on some tight ones. Our next one, I have to say, is looking like one of these steals of the draft. It's Spencer Schwellenbach.
Yeah,
JMC was all over this guy early on, and I fully admit I was a little suspicious. 8 innings shutout, 10 Ks. I need to get a little soundboard with the Nick Kroll collusion thing. He really does. I think he took a perfect game into the 6th or 7th maybe. Really, really awesome, showing 47.6 points against the Marlins, and a huge boost for JMC in that win over Flaming Prius.
And then a quick moment of silence for Braves fans.
Oh,
you are seen, you are heard, and we feel for you.
We feel for you.
Right.
They're going through it, man. And finally, we had Zach Gallen. This is one of those where he did have a little bit of a lower number overall, but it all came in one game. Just 6.2 innings pitched, but no runs. 13 Ks.
Baker's dozen.
Yeah, that puts up 43.7 points. So only what 4 points back on a guy who pitched 8 shutout and took a perfect game into the later stages. So those 13 Ks really did numbers for Zach Gallen. And helped out in 10. So, a lot of these came in either blowouts or kind of making, matchups closer. But what was one of these that really stood out to you as kind of an important pitching performance on the list?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely got to give it to Schwallenbach here. I mean, 47 points. Not to say that Jay wouldn't have won that game without him, but, I mean, that made up basically... I mean, that got him to 500, so that was a 50-point performance there. It's, we look at this game, if he has a stinker... And, he gives up a lot of points to Miami, or to Miami. Yeah, to Miami.
Yeah.
And, that game against Prius is a lot closer. I mean, like we said, Prius didn't have a horrible day, but it's just the matchups you get.
Yeah, exactly. For me, since you're not going to say, I'm going to say Nate Eovaldi. That even in a losing game, 52.5 is.
I didn't want to go with my boy.
Yeah,
but yeah. I mean, that was a great game. Anytime you could see a complete game shutout, it's always an exciting day at the ballpark.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean that was a really big one. So hopefully he continues. I'm always going to root for Nate Eovaldi. I love the guy.
Nate the Great.
Nate the Great. Next, we're moving on to our bench blunders. Not as big this week. I was kind of joking around in the Discord with you guys. You're making my job harder. We had those big 20-point, 16-point ones last week. But we had a couple on Monday and then a solid one on Friday that helped out. Michael Busch was someone that
that's
actually,
a rough one.
Yeah, let me start this off by again. I know we're talking about this matchup a lot, but it kind of ended up being the premier one to close out the week.
Yeah.
A total of 22 points. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're
Yeah,
right.
like
30 something points.
It's like 31.4 or something
again,
like that. Yeah.
Not a math pod. I teach first grade. You think I'd be better at it. But yeah, 30 something points from a couple of bench blunders from Okie. That was Michael Bush, who had 16.6 on Monday. And then Ozuna put up 14.8 on Friday near the end of the week. So, that's a difference in a matchup. These blunders can be pretty big.
That's so tough. I wouldn't even say Michael Bush is a blunder. That's just
right. And that's where this is a little tough, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to start him over? Whoever you've got as your kind of starting corner infield guys, but then they're left out there, and that's another example. Thinking about that was in that A's series, and we're I'm thinking we're probably going to see a lot more guys starting, especially when the A's are at home. And then the last one was a 12-point performance from Luke Raley on Monday from Mike. And Luke Raley plays for the Mariners, unless I am mistaken.
Yes, I'm
Raley.
Yeah, that would make sense. Mike has like almost every Mariners person or player on his team.
This is the kind of research I should be doing beforehand. Yes, he does play for the Mariners. So
okay.
We did. That was the third highest point, but we did have to put it out. Mike benching his own guy and then outscoring some of the competition. So.
Yeah, that's
our next segment is actually a new one, and it's brought to us by our new co-host. They suggested this to me, and I thought, this is an awesome idea. So this is a segment called Wasted Waivers, where we'll take a look at two pitchers and two batters from each week that were on sort of the free agent market. They were out there and scored some pretty big points, especially ones, that could have helped out the matchups. Our first one is...
Dude, why?
Where did this come from?
I have no clue.
Martin Perez, 62.3 points from 2 starts, 36.7 against Minnesota to start the week, and 25.6 to close it out. I mean, personally... I thought, I was like, there's no way. This is a flash in the pan.
Yep, I thought the same thing.
Perez day. And then he comes out and like 25.6 is solid.
I was just about to say that 25 against Detroit is probably more impressive than the 36 against Minnesota.
Honestly, might be.
Detroit is... I'm going to say this now since we're still early in the year. I think Detroit's going to be the best team in the AL.
There's something special.
I'm throwing it out there right now. So to put up that kind of performance, 25 is nothing to scoff at from your starter. You get 25 really from him. That's a great day.
Yeah. And again, this is a guy who's journeyman. He's, been on 4 teams in 4 years or something like that.
You can also update it. Some breaking news here. I just claimed him off waivers.
There you go.
I was waiting to see if he was going to do it again. And you know what? I saw everything I needed to, so come on down.
We're breaking news on the pod. Martin Perez has been claimed. So we'll see if he continues that hot stretch into
So
next
he's
week.
inevitably due to put up negative 20
of
in
course.
his next start.
Yeah. You got to get one of those.
Stay tuned for that.
We'll get to talk about it next week. Taijuan Walker was our other pitcher, 31.4 points in his first start of the season. It was against Colorado, 6 innings pitched, 4 Ks. Really solid performance from him. I know he had kind of a down year last year when he came to Philly, but he's always a guy I've thought his stuff is really good, and I really wouldn't be surprised. That Phillies rotation looks great between him and Luzardo. I wouldn't be surprised to see him put up some pretty good numbers this year.
Yeah, they weren't in Colorado for that game, right?
No, I don't believe so. Okay, yeah, they were in Philly.
I was going to say, putting up that kind of performance in Colorado, that's
in Coors, that might bump you up again.
There should be like a 2-point bonus if you get a quality start.
Yeah, a little bit of a handicap for Coors. Our next one is somebody who has been claimed this evening. Hideki swiped Trent Grisham off waivers. He put up an unbelievable week, 40.3 points. I mean, that is more than I think some of the guys on our best bats list. And that came off of some really, really solid performances. He had a 14.7 versus Arizona on Thursday, and then an 18.7 versus Pittsburgh on Saturday. Really, really big performance from Trent Grisham. And the Yankees outfield is certainly lacking some thump after Mr. Soto went across town from Queens, but Grisham seems to be kind of stepping up to the plate and showing out like they need him to.
Hey man, like I said, it's playing in Yankee Stadium. I know the Yankees haven't been in Yankee Stadium since opening weekend, but I mean it's why I picked up Paul Goldschmidt. It's having that stadium for some of these fly balls that are outs everywhere else, but home runs here. It's gonna be a big difference. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of Yankees players on on the final 4 teams at the end of the year.
Absolutely, yeah. And that Arizona series was actually in Yankee Stadium, so there is a little bit of that too. Yeah, although they were in Pittsburgh for the bigger one. So yeah, hopefully for our guy Hideki, who we'll talk about later, needs a little bit of a boost. That'll be a good pickup. And then our last one was Geraldo Perdomo, 32.9 points. For the young shortstop out in Arizona. He put up 11.6 versus New York on Thursday, and then 9 versus Washington on Friday. So again, one of those pretty, consistent performances. Those both obviously stand out, but really some pretty good stuff coming out from him. Now, I know 2 of these guys have been claimed, so this question's a little tricky, but which, I guess, between Perdomo and Walker, do you see most likely to be picked up, and maybe more realistically, like which one is really going to stick on a roster going forward? Maybe not just for a stream or an injury fill-in.
Yeah, I think Walker is probably the guy you're looking at to hopefully be, just somebody that can give you a consistent maybe 20 points a start you're hoping for. Like you said, he's got some really nasty stuff, and he's got the pitching to put up good performances. It's just at moments he can kind of fall into some slumps and just start giving up hit after hit. But I think, with Philly, they have a really solid offense and providing some pretty good run support. I mean, this might be just something that if you're able to get 5 innings out of him and able to get the win just because the Yankees offense is so good. I mean, that's free points there. So I think Walker's definitely going to be the guy that hopefully stays. Obviously, I would have said Martin Perez, but that's a little selfish considering
he has been claimed. Yeah, no. Hey,
I just picked him up, but
you kind of get a 2 for 1 there, 2 picks. I mean, for me, I'm gonna go with Perdomo. I have to say, I mean, those are really solid numbers, especially from the shortstop position. It feels like he's just a guy who really knows his role on that team. He turns the lineup over. He posts every day. He's not going to be making a lot of errors. He doesn't strike out a ton. Certainly if there's an injury to somebody's shortstop, I think that's someone, we could see picked up, and he could really stick in there, man. I mean, he's a bigger part of that team than I realized before they gave him that contract out.
Yeah, I mean, that's another good point too. The other thing is too, they're in a rough division.
Yes,
the NL West is an absolute bloodbath right now. Yeah, Rockies
living
fans
up to the NL best.
Yeah, Rockies fans are already looking forward to next season. It's that bad right now.
Yeah, it is definitely tight up there. Next, we're going to move on to our transaction tracker, and as I previewed a little bit, Hideki got some pretty bad news this week as Jurickson Profar was popped for PEDs and suspended 80 games. Obviously, a lot of controversy around this, but within the sort of realm of our league, I was very surprised to see him dropped to waivers. He was drafted in the 10th round with the 119th overall pick. So, obviously this isn't a top pick, but that's a pretty high number for a guy to get dropped in April. Are you surprised to see him dropped so early, or do you think that Hideki's kind of getting ahead of the curve here and realizing, his numbers really might have been from that kind of steroid boost last season?
Yeah, that's honestly, it's such a tough question to ask because the substance that he was that he got caught for was the same one that Manny Machado used when he
Manny Ramirez.
Or excuse me, Manny Ramirez used.
Say, hold on, more breaking news.
Yeah, my mistake here. My mistake. Yeah. But it's basically something that you use when you were on PEDs and you're trying to clean your system out. So it's tough because Profar had always been kind of a good player, but never really lived up to where he was taken in the draft. Mm-hmm. And then last year he just has that insane year, and it's like, oh, all right, he found it. This is the start of the turnaround for his career. And then you get this news, and it's like, I can't even, how am I supposed to take what you did last year as at face value? Now I gotta assume that you were just cheating, and I think ultimately it is the right move to drop him. There's a reason why he cleared waivers. Nobody wanted to go pick him up. Mm-hmm. So I think somebody will pick him up. This will be we're going to be coming back here September, October, and it's going to be, waiver acquisition coming in next season. But I think for what Hideki had to do, I think he made the right choice. And I was trying to look on his team right now. Who else does he have at shortstop?
Shortstop. I think Profar was
he's
playing
got
left field.
Oh, excuse me.
year.
Yeah, left field. So he's got. He's got Cedric Mullins, Kerry Carpenter, Fishman, Mike Trout. I mean, he's got some guys that could potentially fill in. But yeah, that is a rough loss. Taking somebody in the 10th round and having to drop them already is pretty rough.
Absolutely. Well, and he already did bolster his outfield. Andrew Benintendi started the season pretty well, I have to say. I'm surprised and glad to see it from him. So he's filling in at left there. And then, like we mentioned, Trent Grisham earlier has already been picked up. So hopefully Hideki can, moneyball those numbers a little bit. I got to say, I agree with you. My instinct when I saw him was immediately to grab him. Like, oh my God, this is top 150 pick, like in a dynasty format. That's pretty special, especially since, this goes on for years. Like, why would you drop him for 80 games? And the more I thought about it, man, he has been passed around the waiver wire in every fantasy season we've had except for last year. And it's hard to imagine he's not going to head back in that direction. And look, if he really does continue the breakout, good on him. I'm glad to hear that. But, not a lot of guys break out at 31 unless they're, some balanced breakfasts involved. So,
yeah.
Some other things I just wanted to note on the transaction tracker. No trades this week, but we did have some late round draft picks that were dropped after some slow starts to clear up spaces. My boy Trevor Story, who has actually put in 2 10-point performances this week, so he might find his way back onto a roster. I drafted him in the 30th round and dropped him this week. Speaking of clearing out some of that outfield, Hideki dropped his 25th round pick, who was Jorge Soler, and he actually just ended his week with 2 10-plus point performances. So I guess maybe we'll have to, keep an eye out for him on wasted waivers next week. JJ Bleday, this was our highest one, was dropped by Amar Net. He was drafted in the 20th round. So, again, obviously later there, but the outfielder for the Athletics was dropped. And then Garrett Mitchell, who was JMC's 24th rounder, was dropped. But he was actually pretty quickly claimed as a free agent by Flaming Prius. So he is back on a roster again.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Yeah, it's so I think it's going to be kind of slow in the trade departments. We obviously had the one last week. But, it's still very early in the season. Guys are still trying to figure out, who's just on a hot streak and who's actually going to be good this year. So I definitely expect to see a lot more trades start to transpire as we get later on into the season.
Definitely. Something I'm interested to see is how soon are people going to start selling, in this league? How soon are we're going to say, okay, I'm not in it. I'm going to kind of sell for prospects, for picks, for future assets. Will it be this year? Are we going to kind of have to wait till next year 3? This is my first dynasty, so I'm definitely curious to see when about that'll start.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. This is my first dynasty as well. I've always wanted to do one, and baseball dynasty just always kind of made the most sense because of the minor league system and being able to house minor league players already. Apart from the UI on this app, I love this app. That's a pretty big besides, but still it's a fun app to use. Definitely better on the desktop than it is on the phone. But yeah,
I know we're all struggling through. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm excited to see kind of some of these minor league players move around. We're gonna have some kind of some bring ups at the end of the year as well. So potentially some rookies that are gonna come in and kind of shift the playoffs as we approach it.
Should be very interesting. I know I know we're all struggling a little bit with the UI. It's definitely, I think everything that needs to be there is there, but it's pretty complicated. So
yeah,
we're getting there week by week. ESPN was once foreign to us all, and now it's like a second language. So hopefully we'll get there. Well, finally we'll move on to just next week's notes. Look at our matchups for next week. Starting off, we have got Big Peach versus Serial Chillers. Projections have a 58% chance of Serial Chillers taking down Big Peach. Serial is one of our folks looking to stay undefeated, looking to go to 3-0, while Peach is looking for another win to move to 2-1, just above 500. Our next one is Hideki versus Ace. This one's projected similarly pretty close to our last one. It's got a 65% chance of Ace over Hideki. And both of these teams are 1-1, looking to move to 2-1. Our next one is Mike versus JMC. This one's projected a pretty big blowout, but in the other direction this week. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes. Wondering if Mike might have kind of a boom or bust roster. It'll be interesting to see. It's projecting 73% chance of Mike over JMC. It's a big number. That result would have them both at 2-1. But JMC is, of course, trying to stay, undefeated going into week 4. Bose versus Zang, me. Right now the projections are a little messed up. Pardon?
I say you're looking to stay undefeated, right?
I'm looking to stay undefeated, absolutely. And Bose is going for 2-1 again, looking to try and get kind of above 500. The projection system's a little messed up right now. I think there's something illegal in Bose's roster, so it's saying I have a 99% chance. I don't think that is the case.
No.
But what I can say is it's projecting me at 509 points. So depending where Bose ends up, you can kind of extrapolate from there. Okie versus Al Martinet. This is our projected closest matchup of the week. 52% for Al Martinet over Okie. Al Martinet's looking for his first win, while Okie is looking to, again, just like some of those others, go above 500 at 2-1. And then our final matchup is Inten versus Flaming Prius. This is our only matchup this week where both teams are looking for their first win. So for sure, one fewer undefeated team or winless team next week. Pardon me.
So we're gonna get a tie.
We're gonna get a tie. Yeah, they'll go 1-1. And it is projected pretty tight, speaking of which, it's 53% of Inten over Prius. So we'll have to see how that goes. What's a matchup you're looking forward to next week?
Oh, it's definitely got to be the Inten versus Prius, man. I mean, that's both teams looking for their first win. That's always a fun time. And
that's a big
anytime
one.
You're watching a game like that, it's both teams. I beat Inten one of the weeks, so or week 1, I should say. So have a little bit of maybe rooting for him on this one, just to want to see him win. But yeah, I'm rooting for a tie.
Yeah, that's gonna be good. That was gonna be my answer. I know you obviously want to match up with you. I'm gonna say Mike versus JMC. I gotta say I'm really interested to see how Mike's team kind of shakes out in the scope of this league. That was a huge upside, even bigger than this. It was 77% projected for Al Martinet. So definitely interested to see how Mike's team shows out next week against JMC.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a good matchup as well. Yeah, JMC, he's looking to stay. So what? It's 3 teams looking to stay undefeated?
Looking for 3 teams. Yeah, it would be me, it would be JMC, and Serial. Yeah, that's it. All right. Wonderful. Well, that'll do it for us today. I'm your host, Ari, aka Zang, and thanks again to my brand new co-host, Robert Ace Garcia. Thanks for joining, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to doing it next week.
Awesome. See you all this time next week.
Do you know what that makes you, Larry? Lollygaggers.